เ Alright guys, and back again with the analysis segment joined by SmallAnt1. What's up SmallAnt?
Hi there.
And we are in Ruined Kingdom. What an odd place to have a task in, but I feel like especially for people that liked movement, this one has to be like the dream task. But yeah, as always SmallAnt, I'm very interested why you actually chose Ruined Kingdom and what made you choose the objectives here.
I wanted to go into Ruined Kingdom because I figured it would be a kingdom that no one would expect. It's so small and there's so little to do that I thought it would be a nice surprise for everyone that's participating. And with Ruined Kingdom, since there are so few things, the only things that I could find were like, there's the sub-area, and there's the two sub-areas, I think. And then there's the swords in the ground, there's the glowing bumps, and there's the dragon. And so I figured I'd make this task have basically one, maybe two routes, and it's all just movement. It's all movement based, and the person who can do the movement the best will win this task, and that was the goal for this one.
Yeah, very risky role to pick, and especially very risky mindset to approach this task with, because I feel like I wasted a lot of time trying to go for the very best movement, which was in some cases so hard that you ended up wasting a lot of attempts just off of a ridiculous strat that might not even save as much. So I personally grinded this task a lot, but I did not get a clip I was fully satisfied with, because some of the strats I chose were just a little bit too hard to really make in a full run. But as you said, the one that came up with the best movement and still got a full run with it is probably the one that ended up winning this task. And I think this is a good time to look at the top 4 runners here.
Alright, here they are.
Alright, we got some familiar faces in number 1 and 2. These guys do it all the time. Pretty crazy how consistent they are when it's about these tasks. Even though they're not even like, I mean, obviously Circle is like a huge glitch hunter and Tuval is like a router and strat finder as well. But both of them not really too famous for doing full game speedruns at least. But when it comes to these, they do fantastically every single time. But I think that's a good place to start off with, because we do see a difference between Tuval and Circle here. Tuval, once again, not being the biggest fan with spin pound starting with a normal cap throw dive, but while they hit this bump, they are pretty much tight here. Even during that RCJ, Circle, I feel like captures this wire a little bit faster. And I'm actually not completely sure why that is. I think he's closer when he captures it, which maybe made the animation a little bit closer. He also gets the spin throw a bit quicker, it seems like.
It looks like Circle might get Cappy back a little bit earlier, and that allows him to throw Cappy earlier to the pylon, and also gets closer, so it's all just little time saves that are adding up in this section, and that's really where he pulls ahead a little bit here.
Yeah, I agree. The things just align a little bit better. And also, I'm not sure if that mattered much. He decided to go for the left eye instead of the right eye. I think that solely depends on what strats you use. It's not like one eye is actually closer to you.
Mm-hmm. It's just whichever one you want.
Exactly, and once again, Circle with the tiny lead coming to the wire here. And then let's look at the strats they actually do to hit the eye, because they are different. Circle is gonna go for a dive out of the wire here into a double jump, so no power roll, it's just a double jump dive into a spin throw. That spin throw kind of glitches up the dragon's mouth and hits his eye like perfectly, so definitely a nice way to hit the eye quickly.
It's an interesting mechanic there where if there's a slope, no matter how steep it is, a spin throw will go up it, and that's basically what happens on the dragon there, is there's a slope on his face, and you spin throw, and it just slides up.
Tuva, though, decides to do things a little bit differently. He just basically does one power roll, lets it run out, and then jumps, spin throws the dragon in the eye. Once again, spin throws, we know this from tasks these days. We see most people use them now. They just have a little bit more range and they come out a little bit quicker, so usually for hitting something far away, it's the best option you can pick. But yeah, other than that, very similar runs here between Circle and Tuva. There's one difference that I want to point out here actually when they hit the first two swords, because the rest is pretty much identical other than the dragon hit. But on the first two swords, Circle hits the second sword with a cap throw, while Tuval just barely makes it past the second sword. So Cappy is hitting that one while returning to Mario, basically.
Yeah, Circle has to get an extra cap throw in there, but he doesn't really lose time for it, which is interesting.
Yeah, seems like it's basically the same here.
Also, it looks like Circle opts to go for one extra roll boost, and Tuval doesn't do that here on the last sword. You can see that Circle does 1 extra roll boost, which might be another little time save that...
Maybe tiny, because one thing I wanted to point out about this task in general, this sword that we all had to get on top of the pylon can be kind of a trap, because obviously it seems like it would be smart to reach that sword as quick as possible, and that's kind of true, but what really matters is how early the first cap throw reaches it, because there's no matter what, there's going to be a downtime between hitting the sword and being able to capture the pylon. So it's not really about making it close to the sword, but rather having it hit as early as possible. So that time save might have been just super tiny. Once again, I feel like Circle saved a little bit of time on the dragon and a little bit of time on actually capturing the pylon. So maybe he did end up hitting the sword a little bit quicker with a spin throw.
Something else that's kind of interesting with Tuval's route is that at the very start he opts to not do the spin pound there, and I think this is a really good way of showing they're not that big of a time save, because like Tuval gets second without it at the very start, and it doesn't seem like he lost much, if any, time for it.
And also worth pointing out that he actually won last task, being the only one not starting with a spin pound. In this case, he actually does a strat that is not too known. I feel like some people might have missed out on this one, because if you warp to anything, for some reason Mario is considered to be in the air for a tiny bit. So what he was able to do, he was able to throw Cappy and then do an instant dive as he was in the air. Usually if you are grounded and do a cap throw, you can't dive. But after warping to a checkpoint, that's actually possible. So you can just throw to basically determine the direction and then dive.
Yeah, really unique piece of tech that I ended up using on the last task there in Lost King.
Alright, so let's go over to Zenrave here, because he did a very similar approach here. What he decided to do is to not do the double roll, and because Circle said before in the task channel, actually this angle is really hard to get, so he basically did the same as Circle did, but he did end up doing a dive to get that first spin pound on the little bump there. All of the top 4 here obviously having the same bumps and same swords that they chose. Actually no, Miles has something different, we get to that soon. But as far as the dragon hit goes, he just does a cap dive into another dive and then spin throws the dragon die. Once again, spin throw being very beneficial for these.
It looks like Zenrave's route is almost exactly the same as Circle's, except that Zenrave is doing dives before the spin pounds, and the movement up to the dragon also has some dives in it. But other than the dives, it's pretty much the same, so...
Yeah, actually, let me look at what Tuval did again here to hit the second bump. So, okay, he actually ends up doing the spin pound out of the roll, which I remember he said before that he had some problems with, and that's actually some tech that not everybody might be familiar with. Obviously, at this point in time, it's kind of known, but you can actually buffer a spin pound out of a roll. So as soon as you get the power roll, you can start inputting the spins, and whenever the power roll stops, Mario would be in the spinning animation, so you could do an instant spin pound. But yeah, let's look at what Miles does here, because he actually went for what I did in my task, trying to jump up the little railing on the staircase there to hit 2 swords immediately. You could actually hit up to 3, which was incredibly hard, very hard angle to get. But yeah, he ended up hitting 2 there, and then he took out the 3rd sword with another throw here, homing that one in, and then a dive into the spin pound. And that allowed him to skip out on that roll cancel jump that all of the other 3 did. So he could get a better angle towards that last sword.
Make it a little more of a direct line.
Yeah, exactly. That was actually my plan when doing this task. I wanted to do like a spin for a roll cancel jump and go as straight of a line as possible, but that was very, very hard to do, so I did not end up getting a full clip with that. But other than that, he's super close to Zenrave, and once again, he actually opts to do the same movement that Tuval does for hitting the Dragon's Eye, which is just a power roll into a jump spin throw.
I think he does a regular throw, actually. He might not have been aware of the spin throw on the slope tech, because I think at the end here he does just do a regular throw.
True, he actually does a double jump, yeah.
Yeah, he does just do a regular throw, just jumps up.
I mean, definitely not as bad. Usually Cappy, especially when using a spin throw, would travel faster than Mario no matter what you do. So it's usually beneficial to just have the maximum spin throw range. I mean, at the end of the day, he did end up only getting 4th and potentially doing a strat like... Let's actually look here. I think he's ahead of Zenrave going into this arena, or like at least super close. It seems like tied, actually.
Yeah, it may be that they're tied and Zenrave did it slightly faster. That's actually true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does look like Miles Pro is ahead, and just the ending strat there was slightly slower than Zenray.
Yeah, I feel like actually hitting the Dragon's Eye wasn't as big as long as you didn't really mess up there. As long as you had like some solid strat, it wouldn't vary much from my checking. Like it would maybe be a couple frames between these strats, but at the end of the day, it can matter, as we see here. Potentially Miles maybe winning with a faster strat. If he maybe did what Circle or Tuval did, he might have even be able to come in third. But other than that, to summarize this task, once again, your idea definitely worked here. That's what I can say. Like, this task was not as much about routing. I think we might have seen some people go for a different route than the one we see in top 4 here. But even still, it all depended on movement here. You needed good spin pounds, you needed good ways to actually hit these swords. You needed to abuse spin throws. I mean, at least in some cases, I think the best runners ended up doing that. And yeah, super tough task to do. And once again, as someone like me who likes going for these like best theoretical time sheet slots, you kind of commit to do like these incredible, ridiculous movement things, especially on a task that gives you an option to do that. And that can actually be a demise for you, as suddenly that is actually too hard to really pull off in a full run, especially if you only get like a week, comparing that to like a full game speedrun, which you can obviously do for how long as you want. So balancing here between picking a hard skill and actually having some consistency to get full runs. But once again, Circle 2 were prevailing here, showing their consistency with high placings. And we see Miles Pro in top 4, which I think is actually nice to see. He's an IL runner as far as the main game goes, and I really liked watching him before, liked watching the stuff. I always thought he's super clean, and Zenrave a new face, at least for me again. So once again, people are improving, and everybody has like their... I guess Tuval and Circle are just like good at anything, at least as these tasks go. But then for the other two spots, it seems like these different skill sets come in between routers and like movement guys, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think Miles Pro, his movement in the last task was really, really good. It was just the route that brought him down a little bit. But with this one, with the route being a lot more clear, he was able to really shine and just be really good at movement.
Yeah, definitely super enjoyable task to watch the results of. Maybe not as enjoyable when you actually went for these hard strats, but I still loved coming up with ideas on how to actually be fast here. It just got a little bit tedious when you actually had to grind for like a good clip, but other than that, I really enjoyed that task as always. However, this is task 5 and we still have 3 tasks to go, so I think this is going to be a great time to check out task number 6.
Here is the next task in Lake Kingdom.